Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Moving People to Action. The People Are Rising town hall meeting. The focus this evening, we will do a deep dive as it relates to the vaccine, the process of vaccinating folks, and we have some thought leaders, subject matter experts, and folks that really will help us. Do this dive into this conversation. There's a lot of concerns out there in terms of just safety concerns. What's the risk level, and we're going to explore a lot of those concerns that you may have. What I ask that you do is this is streaming live on Facebook. And so please ask friends to join us, join in on this meaningful discussion. And also it will be streaming live on YouTube, our TV station on YouTube, Moving People to Action. And really, I guess first, happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa, and happy in terms of season greetings to everyone. I'm Tim Clark. I'm the founder and host for this evening. With that, I want to bring on, to kind of get us started in terms of setting the pace, I want to bring on one of our team leaders, Raheem Sanders with RP Innovations. And so I want to have him come on. He was with us at our last town hall meeting. Let's talk a little bit about what's resonating with you as it relates to when you hear, the talk has been, we now have 2 vaccines for COVID-19. Now, really, the challenge that lies before us is, how do we get everyone vaccinated?
Right.
And then how do we get people to that believability and that trust level up to where they even want to get vaccinated and take
Right.
the vaccine? So, what are you feeling, man? I love for you. This is the opportunity to set the tone as we prepare our panelists to engage in this conversation.
All right. So again, greetings everybody. And I mean, Tim, to begin to answer that question, we got to think about, how far we've came. So the last time we've hosted this town hall about the coronavirus, we were discussing the purpose of the clinical trials and the importance of the inclusion of the populations and just the importance of the vaccine to protect the public. And since then, I guess we've reached some milestones, because in the United States so far, at least, over 2 million COVID vaccine shots have been administered, but since those
We got a
vaccinations
long
has
ways to go, brother.
long way to go. I think Biden said the goal was 100 million. Herd immunity is like 80 to 90%. But even
Now
with the little,
you said herd immunity. What does that for the folks? Let's break that down. What are we talking about in terms of herd immunity?
yeah, for sure. So herd immunity is essentially a term that's used to describe when enough people are under protection of a particular vaccine. So when they talk about herd immunity, it occurs when a large portion of the community becomes immune to a disease or prevents the disease from spreading person to person, and that's generally based off how many of the people in that population have received a vaccine. And I think the figures for herd immunity is again between 80 to 90%. So if you look at our population, again, in the United States, we've vaccinated over 2 million people so far. But in the United States, it's like almost 400 million people. 80% of 400 million is like 320 million people. That's a whole lot of
That's a whole lot.
vaccinations. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? But
Right.
even about with the vaccinations that we've, seen so far, uh, before in the trials, it was reported about reactions that happen, some injury at the site, some swelling, some fever, chills, and stuff like that. So, in the trials, they predicted some of these items, but there was some additional information that came out after the trials that during the trials, people were getting, facial weaknesses and paralysis. There was some type of, facial nerve paralysis thing going on in the pre-trial. And post-trial, you're hearing some cases of that as well. In the United States, about 11 cases have been reported of people, having anaphylactic shock. The CDC, I think, is investigating about 6 or 8 cases of reported reactions to certain, vaccinations. And the facial paralysis items as well. There's been some cases, I'm not too sure if they're confirmed or not, but there have been some reports of, people developing these type of facial paralysis. So even with the small amount of vaccines that we have administered, there's some, things going on with that. But as you all have also heard, there's a new strain of the COVID virus,
Yeah.
there's a new strain, everybody. So what does that really mean with the vaccinations that we currently have now? Like for the flu, for example, flu virus changes every year. And, depending on the vaccination, it helps out with that strain.
That's right.
But
That's right.
what about the COVID vaccination? What does that mean for this new, strain? And how would that affect, I guess, our immunity around it? And then going back to herd immunity, we're trying to get all of these doses. We got a long way to go before we reach that 80% threshold. But there's some things that are coming out in terms of these reactions that we know in a short-term period, but we haven't even began to uncover long-term reactions and long-term consequences. So as we begin to move forward,
I mean, it's so new. I mean, we're doing this in warp speed. When you think
indeed,
about what you're talking about, your normal flu vaccination and you know all the one. I mean, it's taken, and some of these vaccines have taken years to
yeah,
develop, and we've developed this in less than
less than a
12
year.
months.
Yes, and the flu vaccine, I think it took 10 years to develop. When they first identified it in the 30s, they were using the vaccination, population-wise in the 40s, and they had
Hey,
time
somebody,
to uncover what
hey,
some of those
you
reactions
said
are.
you said I think.
Yeah,
So, we got a fact checker. So somebody check that out and put that
yeah,
out
check
there,
that
so
out.
we can make sure we're accurate in what we say. Okay.
Yeah, so based on my studies, that's, it took at least about 10 years for that influenza vaccine to really hit a large population. But like you mentioned, we rolled this out warp speed. We're only uncovering right now some of the short-term effects. But there are a whole lot of things that we are to uncover, especially as we move into the new year. If we do reach a 80% threshold, what does that mean with the new strain of COVID virus? What does that mean for the reactions that people will have, based off this vaccination? And what does that mean for those who, contract COVID even with the vaccination?
Yeah.
What does that mean for them? Do they become a threat to those who haven't received the vaccine or not? So, I mean, as we move forward into the new year, that's kind of where we are right now. We have to look at this vaccination process at all angles and really figure
Yeah.
out, what do we
Yeah.
need to know as a people to make the best decisions for our family?
There you go. There you go. Man, I appreciate you taking the time to weigh in, Raheem.
Indeed.
And what we're going to do now, man, we're going to take a break, a short break, and we'll bring our some of those questions that you kind of rounded off in terms of that at the end. We're gonna pose some of those questions to our panelists and have that dialogue. And so we're gonna take a short break. When we come back, joining us will be our panelists, and we're gonna jump into this and really have some meaningful dialogue about this vaccine and hopefully calm some of the nerves and pain points out there. So
Right.
stay with us, and we'll be right back. Bring somebody with you. Go ahead and connect. Let them know we're out here, and share the feed so they can join this dialogue. We'll be right back. We're going to take a little short break.
This is Houston Alexander with a public service announcement. Now, Today we're living in hard times, and the COVID-19 virus is spreading all across the country. Now, in order for us to be safe in restaurants, in grocery stores, at gas stations, you got to be able to wear one of these. You got to be able to wear a mask. It's really simple. Just put it on when you go in, and when you get up out of the store or out from the gas station, just take it off. I know sometimes it irritates you, but you know what? This is the safest thing we can do to help us with the COVID-19 virus. So please take the time out, put your mask on, and be done with it. Just like I'm doing right now.
Every store I go into, gotta have it on. Yeah, the store empty, but the line long. Trying to use the soap, but it's all foam. It's a deadly virus, better pay attention.
Hi, my name is Danette Smith, CEO of DHHS, and I am going to take the COVID-19 vaccine because I'm Big Red responsible. I wear my mask, schedule my flu shot, answer my phone if called by contact tracers, and I avoid the 3 C's: crowded places, close contact, and confined spaces. Please protect yourself and your community. For more information on COVID-19, visit dhhs.ne.gov.
Hey, this is Dr. Brown again from the Creighton University Program and COVID-19 Project. I want to encourage everyone in the community that you stay focused on your overall individual health during this pandemic. Do not forget about the chronic diseases that have historically plagued our communities, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, cancer, and depression. Listen, the coronavirus is real. Its only mission is to kill. The best way to avoid becoming ill from this disease is to avoid catching it in the first place. How do you do that? The science is clear. Wash your hands and sanitize as often as you can. Avoid large crowds and wear a mask. Protect your fellow woman and man. If you get sick, contact a medical provider. Shelter in place for 14 days if you become exposed to an individual who has been infected. Protect your parents and grandparents. Get tested to learn your status. The coronavirus is real. Its only mission is to kill. This message is brought to you by the Creighton University Health Sciences and Multicultural Affairs Department and supported by a grant from the Douglas County Health Department.
Kool-Aid, you done it again, man. Wash your hands, wash your hands. Sanitize as often as you can. Wash your hands, wash your hands. Sanitize as often as you can. Go and wash your hands, get the sanitizer. Go and wash your hands, get the sanitizer. Go and wash your hands, get the sanitizer. Go and wash your hands, go and wash your hands. Where your mask at? Put your mask on. If it's too lit, I just stay at home. Catching COVID-19, you be dead wrong. Keep it 6 feet, you be dead gone. I can't move without that mask, it's the same song. Every store I go into, gotta have it on. Yeah, the store empty, but the line long. Trying to use the soap, but it's all foam. It's a deadly virus, better pay attention. People out here dying, y'all better listen. Upper respiratory problems, even chest pains. It don't discriminate, this is not a race thing. Wash your hands, wash your hands. Sanitize as often as you can. Wash your hands, wash your hands. Sanitize as often as you can.
There we go.
There we
He
go.
says that.
There we go.
There he is.
There we go. There we go. There we go. Hey, let's do I know we put your bios on Facebook and things like that. Just real quick, let's start with Jerry. Just a little bit about your position, what you do at the state, and let's go Jerry, Sarah, Dr. Brown, and Seneca, so people can know who we're talking to.
Sure. I'm Jerry Weaver Bryce, and I'm the immunization program manager with the state of Nebraska.
Hi, and my name's Sarah Morgan, and I'm also with the state of Nebraska at DHHS, and I'm the Lifespan Health Services Unit Administrator, which just means that I oversee a number of different programs, a lot of which have to do with maternal and child health.
Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Brown?
Oh, I'm Richard Brown. I'm CEO of Lee Brown and Associates, a healthcare management consulting firm, as well as a consultant to the Creighton University COVID-19 project for the past 6 months. And
Dr. Brown said go ahead.
I've been in health administration for the past 40 years or so, mostly focusing on health disparities and minority population. Thank you. Can you hear me, Tim? Tim can't hear me.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead. I'm Seneca Harrison, CEO of Quality Clinical Research. My company helped develop vaccines, new medication. We definitely been specialized in COVID vaccine. We worked on the Pfizer trial here in Omaha. And now our focus is on treatment. So we're working with Eli Lilly and working with 4 different combinations. Remdesivir is one of the drugs we're working with. We opened up a facility just to treat mild to moderate COVID patients. Tim, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah.
You guys can hear me now. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, I guess everyone can hear you. I'm having a little difficulty hearing everyone, but let's start off with, Seneca, we have the vaccine now. You're the CEO of Quality Clinical Research. So let's just, before we start the discussion, tell us what's in front of us. The 2, vaccines we have, and what's the pros and cons, and let's talk about what we have, and then the process of really why some people still are asking why do I need to take 2? The first one we're hearing you got to take one and then you got to come back and take the other one. So tell us what we have and a little bit about in terms of the vaccine that's in front of us, and then also what you're hopeful about as it relates to, because there's multiple vaccines that's being worked on and that's in the hopper in this whole process. Go ahead.
So starting off, what's in front of us, you have the Moderna vaccine and you have the Pfizer vaccine. They're both RNA molecules. Pretty much it's teaching the body how to fight COVID. We started working with the Pfizer vaccine back in August. I think his name was Raheem. He mentioned a couple of the side effects of, the flush filling of the face, reaction side. Those are what we have seen. The same symptoms as if you will have a flu injection. We haven't seen any of those severe reaction. As we start opening it up to the population, you're going to have those highs and lows. You're going to have some people who will get the vaccine and still contract COVID. You'll have some people that have a severe reaction to it. That is just kind of the nature of the beast. The same thing with the flu vaccine. It worked for most of the population, let's put it that way. The general population will receive it and it will be effective for most people. There will be those one-offs or those cases where it will not work. And kind of to reassure people, why they should get it still, because it's going to help. It's going to help the population on a Omaha-based, Nebraska, the United States, and worldwide. It is going to help if we all get this vaccine. What was your other question? Sorry.
And that whole thing, part 2 is really when you think about risks and what people are fearing, how do we calm some of the nerves and some of those pain points of, I don't want to take this vaccine because I think it's going to make me worse off or it's going to damage me.
You know, I always tell people first, talk to your physician. They're going to give you an honest opinion. They're going to tell you what's best for you. You know, from a research standpoint, you know, we followed all the steps and that it takes to develop a medicine or a vaccine. You know, we talked about the warp speed and how fast. We still followed FDA guidelines step by step all the way through from phase 1 to phase 3. The industry is kind of at a buzz because we did, you know, develop this so fast and followed all the steps. And really now, after these two vaccines are now hit the market, or I won't say hit the market, but been approved, everyone is now looking back and say, well, how come we can't develop more drugs faster or more vaccines faster? So it's really changing our industry on the speed, because you're right. Typically, it'll take 2 to 3 years to develop something, and it'll be billions of dollars that will be injected into one project. And now, not saying billions of dollars weren't injected to develop these vaccines, but the speed, I think people are now looking at, hey, we can develop a vaccine from concept to injection in less than a year. We can get one approved in 2 years instead of taking the 4 to 5. And so to calm the nerves, yes, there are going to be side effects, and I don't want to discount those side effects. To some people, those are real. And in our patients, we enrolled 300 people, and as they called us and expressed their concerns about the side effects, we addressed them, and a lot of them. Most of them dissipate in 48 hours. And so just like the flu vaccine, you know, some people have those same reactions. Within that 48-hour window, you may actually develop flu-like symptoms. Same thing with COVID. You may develop COVID-like symptoms, and then they will diminish over that 48 hours.
And I guess what I'm hearing you saying, you know, in terms of just unlike any other, you know, vaccine, you're going to have some challenges. I mean, it ain't going to, it's just not a perfect type of situation that we're dealing with. But when you look at the risk of not, you know, going the route of trying to do herd immunity, I mean, it's you know, it's a lot at risk. And you know, I mean, you're talking about over 300 people, under 300,000 people dead now. I mean, it could just be unbelievable.
And the jury's still out on a lot of this stuff, herd immunity, if you can catch it more than once. I mean, the data is not all the way in, and we're talking 1 or 2, maybe a dozen cases, and you're talking about the world here. And so we're not 100% sure. And like the gentleman said, you know, the data is still coming in. All 3 of our patients, 300 of our patients will be on our trial for 2 years. And so they have had the injection August, September, and October, and we will follow them until 2022 because we want to take that long-term data. What happens in a year? What happens in 2 years? What happens in a year and a half? We want to collect that data and see if it's still a viable vaccine. Do they still carry the antibodies 2 years from now, or do they dissipate over time like the flu? And this will be a reoccurring one every year. That's still out. It's just, you know, a lot of people are coming together to try to figure this out, and this data will help eventually. Same thing with Moderna's patients. They will be followed for 2 years.
Okay. Now, Jerry, when we look at from really from the state perspective and really preparing, you know, this is, I mean, talk in terms of the depth of really what's in front of the state. And I know, Sarah, you can weigh in too, but this has to just be enormous of an operation of preparation for this.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't necessarily know if I have the words to clearly articulate how much work this is. It's certainly not what I thought it would be. because not only is it going on in the operational level within the immunization program, but then we also have providers growing by the number outside of the office in the state. We have a lot of people watching. We have a lot of people putting pressure on the program. So there's many facets to the process, and it is ever changing, ever growing, unpredictable, difficult, emotional. There's just, it's a big undertaking.
Yeah. And sir,
there, but it's still big.
yeah. And sir, I mean, in terms of just, when you think about what Jerry's saying is humongous in terms of unimaginable in terms of just what's in front of us. Again, from a state perspective, in terms of what's in front of you guys and what you have your hands on and around, how do we give reassurances that, we got this, we got, I mean, and, knowing that, you want to say everything's going to be all right? But talk
Sure.
to me, Sarah.
Yeah. So one thing that makes me, I mean, Jerry's absolutely right. This is huge, and it's the most significant thing that we probably have ever done in public health, or at least for a long period of time. But I feel really good because we didn't start completely from scratch. There is an existing series of programs that CDC has put in place called Vaccines for Children, where we have the infrastructure in place, where we have providers that are enrolled and they're used to putting in orders to get vaccine delivered to them. They're used to, and they understand how to store and handle those products appropriately. They know how to submit data through our state immunization information system, so we can collect that data and then report back out. So all those pieces of how do we get the product out to providers? How do we make sure it's handled appropriately? How do we collect information back? That was already there. And fortunately, we just have to expand that infrastructure to really a much more broad distribution and a broader reach than what we're used to with just the traditional Vaccines for Children, because Vaccines for Children is a real small subset of Nebraskans, whereas this is trying to reach everybody. And the other piece that I would just add is that we clearly don't do it alone. We've got lots of partners with the state. So we work really closely with like our local public health departments, our federally qualified health centers, the hospital systems. I mean, there's a whole network of providers that are really stepping up to say, hey, we can receive this product and we're happy to do what we can to open the doors and get these vaccines in arms so we can get this spread throughout the community.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Brown, from your perspective, as you doing your beach thing out there, I see the palm trees and all that good stuff in the backdrop there. You've been in the public health field for a long time in terms of just when you think about some of the health disparities and really just the notion that people of color, particularly Black folks, are very hesitant. You're on the outreach side, on the COVID-19, you guys at Creighton University with your REACH initiative, Dr. Kosoko Osaki, and that team. What do you say in terms of the efforts and what you've been hearing and seeing? How do we bring along people that they should be worried and they should have questions and concerns? You're muted. You're muted, Dr. Brown. There you go.
Yes, with 8 inches of snow, I thought I'd put some background in that would suggest where my head is really, which is on a beach in Hawaii somewhere. But
okay.
Yeah, I've been involved with the COVID-19 project, as we call it, which is a program that have trained approximately 48 community individuals in terms of understanding the disease and helping them to tell other people within their community about the disease and to try and reduce its spread. What's most important that I've found dealing with the grassroots individuals is that I've always, well, for most of my adult, academic and executive career, I've been trying to reduce the world of ignorance, rid the world of ignorance. But with the grassroots individual, it's very important to take complex information, such as the COVID-19 and the virus and immunizations and trials and all of that, and reduce it down to common, uncomplex language and slogans and information so that they can understand. And the program that we developed for the past 6 months has done that. We've got, as I mentioned, 48 people out there who are communicating with folk in the public housing projects, in the churches, as well as general communities. We've made contact with African American community, the Hispanic community, the Maya community, which is the Native American community, as well as the Sudanese. So we brought all these individuals and trained them as ambassadors so that they can go back to their respective communities to help them understand what this virus is all about and that they should participate in taking the vaccine when it becomes available. So for me, it's just so important to speak the language of the grassroots individuals, and especially those who are most vulnerable in this situation. And we've done that, and I think the state and everyone else should continue to do that as we roll out the vaccine, because there's still a lot of questions from them about should they take it, is it safe, what's it going to do to me? And they can tell you all kinds of horror stories about what somebody said and what they heard. So that's one of the most important things for me, is to continue to communicate to the public, utilizing individuals that they respect and trust about this vaccine. And hopefully we'll get to that herd immunity sooner than later.
Yeah, and I think you said key, respect and trust. I think it's so important, Dr. Brown, what you talked about in terms of breaking it down. And as we look at rolling out the process, Jerry, or anyone can kind of talk to this, but what are we anticipating for us? Just first, second, people out there that's kind of concerned, like, when is my turn? I have a parent. They're 75 years old. They haven't got a phone call yet, or what we're seeing and hearing, where there's some companies, we have relatives that, hey, we're going to get our vaccine today. And then you have this whole thing, well, why are they getting the vaccine so soon? And they work at this place, versus an elderly person not. Kind of talk, what is that process, and how much patience are we going to need to have in this whole thing, Jerry and Sarah?
Yeah. Well, if there's anything that I can say is patience is a virtue, and it's imperative that you really utilize that at this time. Sorry, I forgot the question. Isn't that terrible?
Well, just in terms of just the process, and then who's going to get the vaccine. This whole thing of patience. Somebody's mom that's 75 years old. How long will they really have to wait? You're thinking. So give us some idea of timeline, rollout, all that good stuff.
Well, I think for us in the immunization program, we take a lot of our guidance from the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices and the CDC, Operation Warp Speed, and HHS. So they kind of give us guidance on the research, how things should be done. They kind of have broken it down for us and given us some guidelines as to who should get the vaccine in a prioritized manner. And so for us, we're kind of able to utilize that as a framework. And then it's kind of like what you guys were saying as far as listening and hearing the community and hearing out there. Well, I'm 75, just moved here. Can't remember the last time I got a vaccine. When's my turn? You kind of take some of those things into consideration, and we do discuss those things. We do come together quite a bit at the state and say, I'm hearing this, and this is a concerning population. Well, what about this jurisdiction? They've kind of got, they've got a meatpacking plant in that area. And so to them, those are critical infrastructure workers. So we try to listen to what we're hearing. We utilize the framework that's provided by the experts with the CDC, ACIP, and HHS. And then we try to put things down on paper and see how they look. Again, we'll share it between all of the different programs, between epidemiology, communications, the immunization program, our immunization system group, and we come together and say, how can we make this better? Then kind of come up with something that's final that we feel comfortable enough putting out. And if there's a population that we've missed, I have seen leadership back to the drawing table and say, we really should have thought about this population and we need to add them. Okay. So that's what I'm seeing us do.
Okay. So what are you thinking, Sarah? The folks that's, so we're in phase 1. And so we have started here in Nebraska and really all over the country. I think somebody said we've vaccinated over, are we close to 3 million now in terms of just over the United States?
Yeah, and so you're right. We're in the very beginning stages. In Nebraska, we have broken phase 1 into actually 3 parts. There's 1A, 1B, and 1C. So 1A is really our healthcare personnel and our nursing home residents and staff. So we're looking at who do we prioritize to put at the front of the line, and those are going to be the folks who either carry the most risk because they're trying to treat our COVID patients, or they come in contact with those COVID patients because they're EMS or doing testing, what have you, or who are the folks who are most vulnerable. And we know that our elders in our long-term care facilities are really dying at the highest rate among us all. So 1A is really isolated to those specific groups. The way that the vaccine is coming into the state, I would say we're maybe halfway or maybe a little over the halfway mark through 1A. So I expect that we'll be continuing to work through those groups into January, into the first couple of weeks of January. And that, of course, is not a definite, forecast. It
right.
Depends on, how things go. And what we're seeing is kind of like, Tim, you mentioned in the beginning, that the concerns and the fears over what are the risks associated with the vaccine is really playing out. So not everyone, even if they are in those groups, they're not all raising their hand and saying, yeah, I'll take the shot. They're sometimes wanting to push it off and see how it's going before they stand up to be vaccinated. And then of course we move into the other phases, which will continue on as we get more and more vaccine into the state.
Okay. What we're going to do, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll do our last segment, and just really we'll have some open dialogue. I really want to, begin to talk a little bit about, we have some questions that some of our folks that are listening and or viewing this, and we're gonna talk about some of those questions, and then get into maybe some things and concerns that folks have that we can perhaps, what can they do? Think about some things that they can do to help them become more knowledgeable, to help them calm some of their nerves and anxiety about taking the vaccine. And so we're going to take a short break. I'll be right back, and then we can finish our last segment.